Welcome. We're delving back into Star Wars. Welcome to the HolmFront. Welcome. I am Tyler, your host, and to my right, as always, is my overly artistic friend Mitch. Mitch, welcome.
Thanks.
As you know from the intro, the thumbnail, and my shirt, we've just got done watching Star Wars.
Well, the Skeleton Crew TV show.
Yeah, I think I'm done calling it Star Wars because it's not.
It's very clearly not. Yeah,
It's absolutely not. It's a joke. So yeah, we watched the Skeleton Crew episode 2. We'll be watching episode 3 as well. I intend to finish this show as much as this show is trying to get me to stop watching it.
I mean, I reserve the right to stop at 3 just because that's usually enough time to know.
That's fair. We'll have that discussion as 3 enters the chat. So, what did you think of this episode?
Well, it was a lot shorter, so it was a lot easier to
so.
stomach. Obviously, you'll want to catch our thoughts on episode 1 first. We didn't like episode 1 at all. Basically because it's not really Star Wars. It's like Star Wars fan fiction, or like it's like
it's so yeah. How do
like
you
a Star Wars
that?
themed birthday party? It's like a kid's 12-year-old
that they
birthday
made
party.
into a TV show.
Yeah, and they had all the Star Wars merch and everything, and then now it's a TV show. So, anyways, this one's.
Well, I remember this distinction we made on the previous episode where it's mixing the fantasy element of Star Wars and then the fantasy element of E.T., where the other world comes to you, or as opposed to like you entering the other world. But it's mixing the two, and it's not doing it well. And this one expounds on that a little bit in certain ways, specifically where it intentionally harps upon pirate themes in the music. Like it's going ham. It's like almost trying to emulate Pirates of the Caribbean in the music.
Hardcore.
And then they have overt pirate themes where he has like, they go into one of these rooms on the starship and there's like a big old hat and there's a pile of treasure and there's
a telescope.
There's
like,
telescope.
What?
There's a couple of guys that are pinned to the wall with swords, like these skeletons and stuff. I'm like,
why would they
swords?
need any of this crap? It's like they're in this Star Wars universe. They don't have blasters.
Yeah, and they do have blasters and they all look like pirate weapons. Okay, so let's, as usual, what did you like about it, if anything?
Well, there's this little character that they had.
I knew he was coming.
I had to think for a moment. But yeah, they get to this, they're trapped in space. Oh no, where do we go? And they get this droid on their ship.
Wait.
Yeah.
No, wrong show.
Who takes them to Tortuga, basically. It's just like some pirate hub. So they go there and they land, but then when you park your ship, there's like a little transport that you go in, and then there's this little guy, this little creature that drives you there.
He looks like an animatronic / Muppet.
Yeah.
Like it's clearly practical.
He's like,
and he's just kind of moving.
Yeah. And they like give him this like gold like piece, and he's like, wow, I'm getting paid a fortune, and runs off.
Yeah, he just takes off into the crowd. You're like, wow.
So I kind of liked him. He was fun. And I also liked how there's a brawl, because of course there is. It's a pirate port. And the robot comes from the ship to back them up because they're kids. They can't defend themselves.
I think his name is KB or something.
Or I thought it was SM-33 or something.
Didn't she say, I'm not going to leave KB behind or something? Whatever. I'll remember his name later.
I don't know. He's the robot on the ship, and they get into a tavern brawl, and he just beat the crap out of everybody, and that was fun.
That scene was good.
It was fun because he didn't like resort to pulling out a blaster and shoot all stylish like. He like waits for them to take the first shot, and then he just punches them. And there's one guy where he does like this thing where it's almost like Inspector Gadget, where his arm like extends out like a spring and then launches some guy and then he lands. It's very comical.
Well, then he has these little shields that pop out of his arms that absorb all the heat from the lasers, and he just sizzles a dude.
Yeah, just so it's kind of creative, kind of interesting. And, and you know, he's a pirate droid, so he's used to getting in scuffles like this. So I like that stuff. That was it.
That's all you got, huh?
I don't know that I really liked anything else.
Okay, that's
Well,
fair.
I mean, I could talk about what I didn't like, but what did you like about it? Did you like anything? Nothing? Okay.
Okay, so I'll say
I believe you if you said nothing.
the thing about the show, this episode seems a lot more tolerable, at least for an older audience. Because the first one really doesn't seem to cater at all to anybody that, like a parent that might be watching with their kid. This one seems like it's a little more accessible between both audiences. I'll give them that. It seems a little bit more focused. I can deal with this one a lot easier than I can the first episode, but all that to say, this is not something I would ever consider seriously to be in the Star Wars universe. Like if I'm a creative director, like if I'm in charge of what is allowed to be canon and what's not, this is absolutely not canon. Absolutely not.
No.
This is a Disney.
This is the very first thing that I would cut from the list as being like, no, you're not canon.
I'm not sure if it's the first.
It would be the first for me because it's not even feasible to connect it because it's a joke.
It's not
like
serious.
Fan fiction. It's not serious at all.
Yeah.
And by not serious, I don't mean you need to be serious in tonal sense. I just mean the things that happen in it are not congruent with.
It doesn't fit in a continuity with the Star Wars continuity. Because the Star Wars continuity has already breached all these divides, and this one's trying to invent these bridges that never. I mean, like for instance, like what I was saying before, Star Wars is supposed to ignite your imagination and build this world that you want to be in.
Yeah.
Whereas E.T. is something that brings something fantastic down to the real world. This one's trying to breach the two, and it's like it's not something that can be done feasibly. It's just I don't see a way of doing that effectively. And so this show, it's trying to have its cake and eat it too. It's like as if it pulled a couple of kids from the real world and placed them in Star Wars, and this is their experience. So, I can't take it seriously, and like I'm gonna try and be a little less because I was pretty upset about the first one. I was clearly ragging on it pretty hard. This one feels a lot more accessible to a kid audience. Again, that does not mean that I accept it as canon. It doesn't mean like
a kid or an adult audience.
Kid.
Oh, okay.
Because it feels a little bit more adventurous. Like they've actually gone into a more fantastic world, and like it's going to be more accessible to adults as well. But this one feels a lot more like a kid would enjoy himself rather than the first one, which just feels a lot more. I don't know. I would just cut the first episode out altogether. Outside of that, though, I mean, there's not much, and I feel bad because it is a kid show. It's advertised itself that way. It's not trying to be anything more. Like, and for that, I give it some kind of praise. That little character was amusing. The brawl was funny.
Yeah,
but it's overt themes that like would work better in different properties.
Yeah,
like this is something I would expect to be like a Pirates of the Caribbean kid show. That's what I would have made it.
Well, I wouldn't even have done that though, because
Pirates like Kids of the Caribbean or something.
Well, I guess.
Well, I would have made. I
guess
a cartoon.
I could sort of see that because Pirates of the Caribbean is a little bit more. Is that more kid friendly than Star Wars?
No.
Yeah, I don't really think.
No, I'm just saying that setting would be more believable for what they're trying to do than Star Wars.
I don't think so, because in that setting, kids would not act this way. They would not be like.
No, what I'm saying is like if you made an animated TV show and called it like Kids of the Caribbean or something, then you can set it.
It's not set in Pirates of the Caribbean. It's just like
you can set it there, but just like you're gonna tone it down to a kid audience. But this is what I'm saying is that it's a stupid thing to do.
I feel like it's just stupid. Yeah, I'm not following. Like, I mean, I sort of get
well, what I'm saying is like you can take the universe of Pirates of the Caribbean, animate it, and then put kids in it to like act like pirates. But then I would make it a Y7 audience. Like this is a really young audience.
Okay.
But it fits in a pirate world. That's the only parallel. You can have like a version of Tortuga that's just milder. It doesn't have like prostitutes and such. Where it's like it just doesn't. It's an odd mix to put in Star Wars. Like if I were to do it, like there's actual pirates in Star Wars. Like Han Solo is a pirate.
Yeah.
But he's a brand of pirate that fits in Star Wars. This one's like overtly trying to be like our traditional version of pirates here on Earth.
Yeah.
So it's this odd, like what you're saying, the vegetables and the cream cheese you threw in the blender, and it's just like this is a weird mix.
Yeah, because you have all the pirate equipment is now, or like the hat and the telescope and stuff. It's like, okay, so this is pirate stuff
Right.
from Earth on another galaxy far, far away in a completely different timeline that hasn't even existed yet. Is that what you're saying? And you have it?
Yeah,
Because Star Wars exists a long, long time ago from our present
in a
day.
galaxy far, far away.
In a galaxy. So in that galaxy, they somehow go to the future to collect our technology of pirate stuff and then go back. That's what they're arguing.
If you're looking at it in that kind of a timeline manner, I mean, maybe they're parallel with the pirates' time. I don't know what long time ago means with the Star Wars.
I assume long time ago
like
means like thousands of years.
Could be. I don't think that matters necessarily. It just is like, it's a throwaway line, but I mean, if you're looking at it in that direction, then it's like, yeah, well, how does this...
I'm just saying, like, the logic is not there for this stuff to be there in any feasible fashion.
Well, because it's intentionally separated from our universe. I mean, it's in a galaxy far, far away. It's not our it's not the Milky Way. It's something that doesn't exist in our plane of reality. And so the fact that they have all these similarities, that's intentionally calling back to something that wouldn't exist in this reality in the first place. Like I said, they've already got pirates, their version of pirates, which is someone like Han Solo or the people that he deals with, or Jabba the Hutt or something. Even though he kind of borders gangster, but like,
what would be so wrong about just doing it that way?
What?
Like having them just be like on a pirate ship, but it's like Han Solo style, and it's
because it's going to appeal to kids. Because kids are going to recognize the pirate.
Yeah, I guess, but like, would they not get like the whole image of like Han Solo style as well? I mean, I guess if they played into it more, right? Because there's like a scene where, like, the main girl, she's like captain now or whatever. She makes some flimsy argument for why she's captain, and
she says she kills the previous captain, and since the droid can't prove that she didn't, he's just like, I guess you're captain.
Yeah, I guess he's got a full order somehow. So she convinces him of that, and then she has like a jacket, and then she goes out and like fires a blaster in the air, and I was like, this is like, does this not work by itself? Why do we need to get out this old, 1700s hat from Earth? It's just silly. I don't know. And there's like skeletons and swords stuck in them and stuff. And like, even when they're on,
it looks like a Disneyland ride.
Yeah.
A bunch of props that they just kind of threw around in a starship, and they're like, yeah, this mixes, right?
Yeah, and then they go to the starport because they can't figure out how to get home, which is stupid. They're like, check your memory banks. You don't need to check memory banks. Just look at the star chart on the ship.
You'd think that there's some kind of log that would allow it to go back, because it autopilots out of there.
Yeah, so it can't autopilot back where it was? That makes zero sense. That's stupid. So anyways, so the logic of that aside, then they're on the starport and they get captured and thrown in like a brig, and it's like a Pirates of the Caribbean brig. So like, it doesn't go away, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not like the 1700s.
Right. All
it's
of the imagery is,
all of it. Yeah, the whole thing is like, it's pirates, and they're like, but it's
it's not though. It's Star Wars. Yeah, they just slap the
by
Star
your
Wars
definition,
right? And they keep wanting their cake and eating it too. It's just like, no, it is Star Wars, but it's also pirates, and it's like, Star Wars already has pirates. Yeah, that's the biggest problem, is that it already exists, and so now you're trying to change that definition in universe in order to appeal to a different audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that there's some people who like the show. I understand that there's a younger crowd. Like, your nephew sent me a video and saying he
he's
really
enjoying
appreciated it.
Mm-hmm.
And
like, I mean, he's like, what, 7 or 8 now, so like,
yeah, and I don't mind that audience existing. I don't have a problem with that. My problem lies with the fact that you're using a universe to do this just because of its name. That doesn't justify the existence of what this is. It just is like, yeah, it's pirates in Star Wars. There's always been in Star Wars. It's like, use something else, man. Like Disney Plus, you have plenty of resources you can pull upon in order to create a show that will play. It'll appease the same audience as this one. This is not. I can't imagine that this is pulling in anyone else outside of who it already would pull in if it was just a pirate show.
No.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Star Wars isn't helping it at all. It's just further diluting the name of Star Wars. And that's my biggest problem with it, is just like, it's just something else that you guys are just chucking into the mix. So it's just this big garbage heap now. Yeah. Of just random titles with different. And I'm because I know I've also said that I want something new from Star Wars, but within the rules of Star Wars, they keep
Can I have it within the rules, please?
It is amazing to me that they continuously are able to come up with these strange ideas.
You know what it is? There's a scene in this show that perfectly emulates your exact experience. In this exact episode, they go up to get something to eat at this like ramen shop, and they don't know what to order. It's just like, what do you want or whatever, and they're like, we'll have what he's having, and then they just point to some random guy there. So he gives them these 2 bowls of what looks like ramen-esque stuff, and they're like, okay, that looks fine. And then he grabs this like disgusting,
looks like a lobster kind of.
Yeah, like a lobster thing. And he just snaps it in half and just opens it up and just spills all its guts into their food. And they're like, ugh, like it's so gross. So it's kind of like that. You just want Star Wars ramen. And then Disney's got to go over there and just
like, I guess I didn't know what I was asking for, like an idiot.
Like, oh. Yeah, exactly. Like, I'll have something new in Star Wars. What do you got?
You're like, how about some crap? Yeah, well, the funny thing is,
perfect image.
You know, I've seen...
Isn't it?
And that scene actually did genuinely make me laugh. I'll say that.
It was funny.
But I've seen there's plenty of video game, you know, like trailers or cinematics that I've seen
Knights
that
of
are
the Old
like
Republic.
I was like, this is compelling Star Wars content.
Yeah.
That I could get behind.
Mm-hmm.
Disney is just constantly like, it's reaching for these weird ideas. It's just strange ideas. Either they can't be original, or they're so original. I don't even know if I call this original. They just kind of mashing things together to see what fits. Like, I understand that it's going to appeal because of like pirates are just innately going to appeal to a certain audience, right? Typically younger. And Star Wars is going to appeal to an audience, and they think, well, just take those audiences and push them together. And it's like, you can't just do that. Like,
round peg, square hole, make it fit.
Just get in there. So anyway,
so okay, I have a question then. Like, because obviously there is a tone and a consistency that needs to be maintained in order for it to be called Star Wars, as our definition is describing.
Sure.
Is there like other examples of franchises you can think of where this rule has been like demonstratively broken? Because I feel like Star Wars is one of the prime examples of this happening, where they just, it's like you'll watch like Mandalorian or like Skeleton Crew or something, and you're mortified by like how different and like not even about good or bad aside, just like throw that out the window, just like how unbelievably different, how much they contrast so starkly with like the original trilogy. It's like, even with the prequels, yeah, I get it. There's things about the prequels that's really lame, but there was still like an effort and an attempt to maintain.
There seemed to be some kind of continuity.
A grand drama about like family lineages and stuff like that. And that's what the original trilogy was about. So I feel like that's why it's a little bit easier to accept the prequels on that level. And like, even like the Force Awakens, I guess, to some extent the 8 and 9, but mostly Force Awakens, like even those are somewhat acceptable because there's like a portion of that tone is still maintained.
Yeah.
They go off rails in terms of like the actual strength of the story. That's super, super weak. And there's a lot of like Michael Bay-esque decisions. But yeah, do you feel like there's other ones where it's like, oh, they just totally lost the tone?
The closest one I think I could point to would be Marvel. Because Marvel...
Really? Oh, you mean like in recent memory Marvel?
Yeah.
With like She-Hulk and stuff like that?
Well, generally because of how different some of the show tones seem to be than
that's fair.
The films. Just because, so you have the continuity of the films, and then they do this branch off thing, which I think the biggest or the clearest example I can think of is WandaVision, mostly because it's the only one that I actually watched.
Okay.
Well, actually, I take it back. I watched the Captain America show. That was rough.
That's true. Yeah, because the
Captain America and Winter Soldier, whatever it is that they called it.
The Marvel shows came across to me, I have not seen them, but from the few clips that I saw, they seemed very, very juvenile in a way that the movies were not. Like the movies were always friendly to a child audience, but they were not.
They were friendly to a younger audience.
To a younger audience. Yeah. And they were not demeaning. I didn't really get that. They were shallow, but not demeaning.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
they didn't.
I think that's
they
important
weren't
distinction.
like stooping to gain an audience.
They were not like, let's dive in and treat you like a moron and just make everything stupid. They were just like, here's one of our jokes for those of you in the audience. And it was like, that was not a funny joke. Okay, moving on.
Sure. And then the shows, because they deviate quite a bit, like WandaVision specifically, because of the spoilers for WandaVision, because of the breaches in reality that Wanda is trying to create, it presents itself in a way that emulates different styles of show making throughout the ages. So the first one they do emulates like an I Love Lucy type of style where they have the 3 camera setup and then the kind of one-liners and such. And then they move through time to like the 60s and 80s and 90s and then 2000s kind of sitcom type things.
Doesn't that one get the excuse of the benefit of being like a psychological deep dive that you wouldn't be able to do in a movie as well, or certainly not a Marvel movie?
You can say that.
Your point is that it's too different, though?
It's not a criticism. It's more of just like that's a very tonal difference from the films, which have a very kind of linear superhero storyline.
Yeah.
Whereas the shows are kind of deviating with playing with new ideas. Like She-Hulk, for instance, is trying this like courtroom drama / meta narrative, from what I understand of the show, that is very different than what the movies do overall. And then the Captain America Winter Soldier. That one's probably closest to trying to keep up the superhero narrative because they deal with like a lot of the super soldiers and the serum and such. But then obviously it gets into some political messaging that didn't, you need to do better, Senator. But that's probably the closest one I can get to because that one does have a series of films that are all very similar in style and tone.
Okay.
And then it has this deviation when you get to
such a
the
profound
shows.
way.
But it also is trying, like I said, with this one, it's trying to have its cake and eat it too, because it also it deviates with the shows, but it also tries to come back into the universe with those shows. So they're trying to connect them despite their differences. This one seems to be doing less of that. Like, it's not trying to connect to a larger narrative. It's just kind of like, well, Star Wars is a universe big enough to house these things, right?
Yeah.
Where in my opinion, it's like, no, the artistic endeavor that is Star Wars has a set of rules that George Lucas set up, and he did it, on a large scale because, like you're saying, is that the original trilogy and the prequels, while they have their differences and their ambitions, they do have a continuity, a through line, if you will, that kind of connect them all. And it's not just in the fact that it has characters that run through, like Anakin Skywalker and Vader and Palpatine and such. Like, they have larger themes that connect their narratives.
Yeah.
And they connect their themes. They connect the Star Wars universe. When you get into these shows, like...
Yeah, what's like the theme of the show? Like, why are we watching it?
In Skeleton Crew?
Yeah.
As in what justifies it as a Star Wars property?
What justifies it just as a story?
I think literally it's just the fact that someone came up with, well, what if we had a pirate story in Star Wars and executives thought that would go over well and that would get butts in seats and that would appeal to a younger audience. So they said, yes, that's what I think happened.
Because one thing I really did not
and they're not wrong. They are appealing to a younger audience.
Sure.
From what I've understood.
But one thing I really did not like about this episode was specifically when there's a moment where everybody's ganging up on Wim, the main character.
Yeah. They're
ganging up on him because it's his fault that they're lost.
He pushed the button that got him into space. Yeah.
Yeah, and he led them to this place in the first instance, So they have somewhat of a right to be upset with him. And he's like, oh, and then he kind of storms off. And I thought that was a moment where I was like, okay, the next scene I'm going to find him in, he's going to be feeling sad about it. Like, because he's scared too. He's like, I'm away from home and I'm around a bunch of people who are blaming me and saying that this is my fault. And it's like, I wasn't intending for these things to happen.
Sure.
So they're just being mean to me. And I was, I didn't mean for all this to happen. I
just want to be a Jedi.
Yeah, I just want to be a Jedi or whatever. I mean, so it's like, whatever. But I assumed that's where they were going to go so you could have his narrative arc. And instead, he's like, "This is great. This ship is so cool. Like, why isn't everybody on board with this?"
He's trying to just jump into his illusion, essentially.
Yeah, and I was like, it's a weird angle to take. I don't know how I feel about that. It just felt like it was. I don't want to say like it was unethical because it wasn't like a big deal, and maybe they'll get around to that.
Well,
but it just felt. Did you sense that? Am I wrong? Like it felt kind of like.
I actually.
Where's his remorse and kind of like, I
probably identified it with him a little bit more because if I were to make that kind of a decision at that age, I would probably try and escape within my realities as well, or my fantasies, I should say. Because now I'm on this adventure. Like, despite the consequences of having dragged all these other people with me away from their homes, like, I get to go on this adventure that I've been constantly fantasizing about. So I can just fade into that reality until reality eventually hits me in the face. So, yeah, I mean, there is that. The more egregious thing, in my opinion, was the fact that they meet Jude Law at the end of the episode, and he just happens to have this ability that he could have used long before these people showed up.
I know, to break out himself.
He's like, "Oh, I'm a Jedi now. I could have gotten that key at any point, but I'll just do it now that I have a group of kids that'll help me get out." It's like, why are the kids the catalyst for you getting out of here? Like, why didn't you just leave before?
I'm assuming they'll provide an explanation in the next episode.
Hopefully.
Because that was so glaring. I was like, there has to be a reason why they...
I hope so. I hope they explain that better than just, well, I just needed a ship. It's like, this is a pirate bay. Like,
I know, steal a
ship.
There are
only ships here.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, the only things that I'll say about the episode is the robot was cool.
Yeah.
The werewolf guy looks kind of cool.
He's like the pirate. He's the leader of the pirate
right.
bay.
And then the brawl was fun. The little character that you were the little animatronic guy.
Little
he's
Muppet
kind of
guy.
fun.
Yeah.
And
there's like fun stuff in it, I guess.
It had more charm than the first episode, but again, I'm still having a hard time justifying this being a Star Wars property, just because it fails to adhere by the rules that Star Wars exists in.
That's fair. Should we give it one more and see where we're at with that?
Let's give it episode 3, and we'll decide if we're going to continue at this at all. Like,
let us know.
Yeah, leave your comments below if you and I don't ever do this, but if you're liking this content, I mean, I hate asking for this, and I hate when creators do it too. It drives me crazy. I'll just throw it at the end of the episode because whatever. But like, subscribe, comment. Let us know if you agree with us or disagree. I know that we come off as pretty like intense with some of this stuff, but also having high standards for art is something that we have shared for years anyway, and it's something that we have noticed less and less of these days. It was one of the reasons why I started the show. And I think it's kind of egregious that these things just exist because people are just willing to be like, well, it's something to watch. It's like, well, yeah, but wouldn't you want to watch something actually that people are passionate about making rather than just something that they could make? I'd rather see something that people put their heart and soul into and actually really wanted to come to screen, like what I get from Denis or from George Lucas or Steven Spielberg. Like, these are people that you know are going to put effort into creating something that not only reflects their imagination, but also reflects culture or has a deeper statement or something philosophical to say.
Yeah.
And I really want, like, and I'm not expecting that from Skeleton Crew, let's be honest. Like, I understand this is a kid's show, but I also understand that you're slapping a name on it, Star Wars, that is evocative of certain themes and ideas. And to ignore those things is to basically ignore its identity. It's claimed the identity of Star Wars, and it is now saying, I don't have to abide by the rules of Star Wars to exist in it. And in my opinion, you do. If you want the name, you got to follow the rules. So that's why, like,
well, fair is fair, because there's it's just an irresponsible thing to do. That's how I interpret it as well. And like, I don't necessarily like disown anyone who has the perspective of like, oh, well, they're free to do whatever they want. But yeah, like I guess part of it too is like we're both artists as well. Yeah. So like we know what it's like to slave over a project for a really long time and to have to like push yourself to make everything like uniquely your own and to like be inspired by things but not let that totally dominate what you're working on. And so it's really hard to take in a project that just doesn't
seem so lazy.
Yeah, it just seems like it's like, look, I could have written this over like a weekend. I'm not even joking.
And it seems like someone probably did.
Yeah, and it's like, so yeah, I got high standards, but also too, like, in the broader context, like as a teacher myself, that's like the other thing that I do. And, I teach like classic literature oftentimes, or like texts that have been like they've gone through the mill. So like when I'm going through that, it's like, if I'm teaching Beowulf in a class, it's not because Beowulf is like necessarily a masterpiece. Like Beowulf is mostly a Marvel movie. The difference is that it's a Marvel movie that someone way back in the when said was super important, and we got to preserve this story because it's awesome and we love it. And so it says something about like the culture and the time. But the thing is nowadays we're removed from that, and we live in a time when we just have all the stories in the world. So it's like you could watch anything, you could play anything. And the fact that like you're going to take an option that just feels like a little like this is just low tier. This is like,
that's fair.
But yeah, I agree with you on like and I mean, we're still new enough, I think, on the scene for it not to be that shameless for you to like ask for likes and subscribes. It would just be nice to get some feedback, just because,
Sure.
I'll chime in there just because, if you guys like an episode or our commentary on something, it's helpful to know, because then not that we would necessarily only focus on that, but it gives us some guidance as to like what works and what doesn't.
I also enjoy hearing disagreements. Like I'd like to hear.
Same.
But a substantive one, please.
Like I liked it, okay,
or I didn't like it. Whatever. I do want to hear why. I want to, and like
I thought Kraven the Hunter was the best movie ever.
If you say that or you believe that, I want to have you on the show, and I want to hear why. I want a substantive reason why you think that. But I mean, that's far on down the line. Anyway, so we're gonna go finish episode 3.
Episode 3.
And we'll see you next time.